I have has a tan paper in it, which I kind of like. It's just tone tan paper. And so that's what I'm going to use. And you can see I'm going to do a couple of drawings of my hands, and you can see like I could fit a couple of hands on here. And so that's good. You just don't want to draw teeny tiny, because the smaller things are, the more precise you're going to have to be. And I don't want you to set yourself up for failure. So the first exercise we're going to do is a blind contour drawing. And you can use any marker or pen that you want. I have some variety here of some of my favorite tools. This is probably one of my favorite things I got a couple of years ago. This is a Pentel Japanese pen. It's a company that exists in the United States too. You can buy a lot of Pentel pens, but this one has a brush tip. It's actually a paintbrush, and on the inside, it's got these little cartridges of ink, and it's India ink. And you can buy 12 cartridges, I think, for around $10 on Amazon. So when it runs out, you just replace it. And it's like you've got India ink and a pen. And I use this literally multiple times doing different drawings and sketches. I'm not going to use it today, but I told you one of the things we were going to do was share our favorite tool that we use. And this recently has been one of my favorite things. But if you just have like kids markers at home, Crayola markers, or whatever markers, or even a ballpoint pen at this point, you can use that. I'm going to use a little bit a larger marker so you can see the lines, hopefully. And a blind contour drawing means that you're not looking at your paper, okay? And the reason that this is a really important exercise is because a lot of times we obsess with how our looks like the object, and we're not really paying attention to the object. And I have students all the time, I'll see them drawing, and they're not even looking at what they're supposed to be drawing. They're just making it up because it's like their brain is telling them, oh, I got this, don't worry. So sometimes I'll have students, when I'll say, okay, do a blind contour of your hand, I walk by and they have something that looks like this on their paper. That's not acceptable. We're not kids. That's a cartoon. It's not a real drawing. So I don't want to see Gumby looking hands. We have quite a bit of detail in our hands, and you can draw whatever objects, like I said, that you want, but the hand is usually a kind of nice thing to draw. So I'm going to put my hand here, and then I'm actually positioning my body to where I can't see my paper. And so you may want to kind of turn to one side so that you aren't looking or tempted to look at your paper. Now these are continuous. Notice that's on the paper, which means that we're not going to pick up our marker, okay? So you're going to make a continuous mark, and that's hard for some people, but we're so used to doing that sketchy thing and going back and forth and making indecisive marks that this is going to make us continue throughout the process. So we're going to draw about the same speed as an insect or an ant, maybe, that was crawling on your hand. And you're going to just start on one side. If you're right-handed, I would start on the left side. And if you are left-handed, start on the right side. And it should take about 3 to 5 minutes, depending on, how fast you draw. But take your time. Contour is all about taking your time. And I know you can't really see my body, but I promise I haven't looked once. So you're just going to go through each finger, going in and out, trying to draw every line that you see. And if you lose your place, just pick up somewhere else. Don't stop completely. You may end up with an extra finger or missing one, but this is just an exercise. And what this does is it really makes you calm down, pay attention, engage that right brain. And really focus. So I don't know how well you can see it from a distance, but up close you can see, you can kind of tell it's hand-like. I see my thumb, 4 fingers, but you can see where I was drawing like the lines from my knuckles, my fingernails, everything. It looks like I got off track somewhere in here, but that's fine. This is just an exercise. So you're going to do 4 of those, and if you want to, label them, you can, so you remember what they are. And then, of course, you'll want to put the date on it. These are for the exercises, and I'll tell you with the nicer drawings, we'll talk about other ways of proving it's your work, but for the exercises, it's okay to label it on the paper. So that's a blind contour. It's probably not going to look super realistic because we're, one, making a continuous mark, but 2, we're also just learning to see, okay? So it's not really meant to be perfect. And if you're in drawing 2, I want you to do these also, because at any level you're at, these are always going to help you get better, okay? And then I'm going to just change colors so you can see that, and I'm going to move on to the next one, the continuous contour. And the continuous contour is basically what we did with the blind one. I'm just going to change pages so it's a little cleaner, but you can do more than one per page if you want. And I'll show you another technique in a moment. So for the continuous contour one, you actually are going to look at your object, whether it's your hand or if you choose to draw something else. But this time you're going to look, but you're still not going to pick up your marker or pen. So I'm going to start on one side, and I'm going to draw. So these are going to look a little bit more realistic, hopefully. Maybe not. It depends, how much drawing you've done and how warmed up you are each day. Some days I find that I do better at these. I'm going to stand up because it's kind of hard to see this. If you have your paper flat and you're not at that same angle, you're probably going to get some distortion in your drawing. So I talk about some of that in the video over the supplies. So I'll tell you with each drawing that we do, which ones that you'll want to work with upright and which ones that you may want to work flat. So notice I haven't picked up my marker once. I'm just following along. If you make a mistake, it's fine. We're human, and this is an exercise, okay? I remember the first time I worked out when I was training for a marathon, like it was probably almost 10 years ago now. I joined a gym because the school that I was teaching at the time, they didn't have like a private locker room for faculty, so it was kind of awkward. And then they started tearing it back outdoors. So one day I was like, I'm not going to ever be in shape. And I was on my way to McDonald's, and there was a 24-hour fitness next to the McDonald's. And I'm like, I should probably go get a gym membership rather than buying fast food. And so I went in and they gave me like a free trial, and they gave me a free day with a trainer. And he was like, do a burpee. And I had no idea what that was. And then when he showed me, it was hard the first time. So a lot of these exercises, they're going to be like that. They may feel kind of strange and uncomfortable, but if you do it and bear with it, I promise it's going to look good. So you can see this is a continuous contour of the hand. This one looks a little bit more anatomically correct. Still probably not perfect. I'm using a really bold kind of Sharpie marker. And so, the line quality may not be exact the same, but it looks better than the blind one. There was one day that I actually was doing really good blind ones. I had 4 classes back to back where I was doing these exercises, and by the 4th class, because I had been doing it all day, my blind ones looked just as good as my continuous ones. So you may want to label these. And like I said, you could do multiple ones per page. If you're in drawing 2 and you want to do something a little more challenging, and if you're drawing your hand, you could try holding objects in your hand and drawing all of that together, or choosing maybe objects that are more complex, like maybe here's a pine cone from my backyard, or something that maybe is a little bit more complicated to draw. Another thing that's kind of fun to do that I've seen several videos about is doing multiple contours and different color markers or different materials on top of each other. So just imagine if I did like another one of these with like this fine marker on top of this one, it will almost have like a sort of surrealistic mirroring effect to it. And you can see how having like those two images, it kind of creates an illusion. And then I've seen people take like watercolors or watercolor markers or pencils and then put color in these and make like these really cool, like surrealistic looking kind of stained glass things, especially if you use like like a thick and a thin black marker and you do like a blind drawing and then you do a contour drawing over each other. They end up looking really like almost like a Picasso or Salvador Dali kind of work. So you can do some, there may be some creative ways you can add to this. So that's a continuous contour. The opposite hand, I'm just going to turn this one this way. The opposite hand, you're just going to work with your opposite hand. So I'm right hand dominant. So that means that I would draw with my left hand and I would be drawing my right hand or whatever object that I want. So for this one, I'll go back to this color marker. So I'm going to be drawing with my left hand. Now, since I'm drawing with my left hand, I'm going to start on the right side of my right hand because that way I can move across and I'm not like having to draw at an odd angle. And that's, again, that's why Da Vinci, he wrote backwards. So this is going to feel weird. The strangest part will be like how to hold this. To me, it just reminds me of like when I was a kid and I was learning to use chopsticks for the first time. It felt kind of strange. So you'll have to get used to holding the material, but just take your time. Don't take the stress off. This is when I have students that are like, oh, this drawing stresses me out. I'm like, just wait till you get older. Like I would give anything to just have to draw, for a few hours a day and not have to worry about anything else during that time. So I know this is a class that I'm teaching, but it's actually, this is like the funnest part. I've been looking forward to this moment all week just because I could turn my email off and everything else. So I'm going to start on this side of my hand. And I don't make students do this blind. That would just be really cruel. But if you want to try it, you totally can. But it's going to feel weird at first. But just take the pressure out of it. Like it's just drawing. It's just an exercise. Just do your best. Don't mess up and throw anything away. Just keep going. It's all, it's all a process. And I'll always do these demos. I know sometimes they may be long, but I always found them helpful when I was in school. I had some classes, especially at a university, where I would have teachers that wouldn't do demos at all, and they would just give you the assignments, and they expected you to figure it out or know it, or you just weren't meant to be an artist. And being someone that grew up on a farm, with parents that were not, super cultured or into things like art, for me, I didn't really have much of a foundation besides just my own curiosity and interest in it to really drive me. So I had a lot of practicing and trial and error early on, trying to figure out a lot of this stuff on my own. So whenever I took classes and teachers would show me, oh, this is how you use this material, or this is how you start a value study, to me, I always found it helpful. So hopefully you do too, because like I said, you will not get that at every school that you're at. I remember when I took my first painting class at UT, when I finished up my bachelor's degree, my painting professor never gave us an assignment, and he told us, like, I had a student once, a student in the class asked him, how do I mix orange? And he was like, I'm not going to answer that. That's a question for kindergarten. And if you don't know that, you probably shouldn't be in this class. And the student went and dropped. So it, you may encounter, professors like that. I just finished an art appreciation class online, and several students didn't turn in assignments at the end and complaining. And I had classes when I was in college where teachers would say, oh, the final exam is optional. If you have an A, you'll get an A, but if you don't have an A, you can take the exam to bring up your grade. And I'll never forget, I took 5 honors math classes when I was in high school, and because I had planned on, I wanted to try to be a doctor, and then I fell in love with art. But when I was I took 5 honors math classes, and then my first semester at college, I took college algebra, and I thought this is going to be easy because I did all these advanced math classes in high school. I had like a 98 average, and then he said for the final, you don't have to take it if you got an A. But this was before the internet, so I remember just thinking, okay, well, I think he said that, but I don't really know. I'm just going to go take the final anyway because I've got an A. It won't hurt to take it. So I went, I didn't study, I didn't bring my formula sheet, and I just was basically writing numbers on paper because I thought it didn't matter. Well, I got my report card in the mail because they used to mail the college report cards, and I got a C. I had an A and I got a C for the class. And I had to wait till the next semester because teachers didn't have email, and I went to that teacher's office and I said, oh my gosh, I had an A in your class, but I think you made a mistake. You gave me a C. I said, I didn't need the exam. I just took it because I didn't know for sure what you meant. And he's like, oh, well, you took it, but you got a 30. And when I averaged that into your grade, it brought it down to a C. And I was like, yeah, but I had an A. And he was like, yeah, but you took the exam. And so he gave me a C. So you are gonna, if you guys think that we're mean at Northlake, you're probably gonna be in for a rude awakening if you go to university. So just be prepared for that. Like take advantage of your instructors that you have and all that you're being offered, because it is going to get more challenging as you go along. So here you can see this is the blind one. You really can't tell much of a difference. I think I got a little weird with my palm because it was kind of at a foreshortened view when I was drawing it. But you can see it's about the same. You saw I didn't cheat. I didn't pick up my marker once. So this, when I say blind, it just means try one with your, not blind, I'm sorry, your opposite hand. So you can try just one with your opposite hand and see, you know, how you do with that. Okay. So let's see. All right, then the next one is, it says to do 2 cross contour drawings. And the cross contour means that it's suggesting the volume or form of the objects. So like, let's say that I'm just, you don't, this is just a drawing I'm gonna do of, like, let's say a cylinder. So if I were to draw a cylinder like this, let's say a sphere, and I don't know, that's all I can think of. Oh, maybe like a rectangular, you know, form even, you know, something like this. So if we were to do hatching lines, they go straight across. And so if I were to put hatching lines on this side to look like shadows, that kind of flattens it out and makes it look more like the edge of a ruler when we know that this is curved. So what contour lines are, so I wouldn't do that. Contour lines mean that they're going to suggest the contour or the form, suggesting the volume and form of that object. So they're going to be slightly curved, kind of like lines on a topographic map. Okay. And then you can also add vertical ones. Obviously, they would go straight up and down. And then maybe there would be some, you know, in here. It's going to make it look better. Same thing with like a circle or a sphere. We would see lines kind of like latitude and longitude on a globe wrapping around. So basically, this is what cross contour means. And then I could even do some vertically. Of course, they would be closer together as they go further off on the side. And then they would be further apart as they get closer towards the center. For this box, that was a little, the perspective was off. But for like this box, I could even do contour by like suggesting the sides and dimensions. So these hatching and cross contour lines, they help add value, but they also help add the volume or shape or form of the object as well. So what you to do, I say of whatever objects that you want. Let's say that I'm going to do this of my hand. I'll just draw my hand again. So I'm going to start out with a continuous contour. I always like to do that because if you start out with trying to go back and sketch like you used to, this is going to take an hour. But if you can do it in like 15 minutes or less if you just use what we've already learned up to this point. So I would do these in order because they kind of lead into each other, I think, and will help you get through it better that way. So I'm going to do a quick continuous contour. And I can hear my phone blowing up and the messages, so I will come back and answer all of those questions. I promise. If that's you all, if it's my coworkers, they can wait because I'm in class. You guys are actually saving me from all the drama I have to deal with as dean. So I am kind of rushing through this just because I don't know how entertaining this is for you all because I can't hear or see you, but hopefully it's not too bad. Okay, so I have an okay continuous contour. Now I'm going to change color markers with this just so you can see it a little bit better. And then I'm going to start to put in these cross contour lines. Now, there's not one way to do it for everybody. So I would just put your hand back in that position and think about lines that would wrap around. So think of your fingers kind of like earthworms. And the earthworms have all those lines of segments on their, the segmentation on the earthworm. So think about your fingers. They kind of do have that depending on how wrinkled your hands are. And we can kind of get the idea of the different planes of like the palm from the wrinkles in our palms as well. So one great object to do this with, if you have any seashells, they're great because they actually have the contour lines on them already. So if you have seashells, do that. I really want you to draw from three-dimensional objects right now because when we draw from flat images or our computers, things are really flattened out. And so they can kind of mess with your sense of space and like what you really see. So I prefer you to try drawing from real life whenever you can. Okay. So if I think about like the thumb here, it kind of rounds and drops, and this part of my thumb is a little flatter. So maybe I want to make lines like this that kind of come around. And sometimes you can use the wrinkles, they'll kind of go along with it. And again, this may not be perfect. If this is your first time to do this, like literally don't sweat it. Like, calm down. But what I don't want to see is I don't want you to just draw straight lines or that's going to flatten all of this out. So do you see how I'm kind of following the natural curve of my palm? And then that ends up kind of lining up with everything else. And then here it kind of comes across the flat top of the finger and then wraps around. And here it's pretty flat. It's kind of just curves on the edges. And if you're wondering, like, how does he have all these art supplies? Well, I overcommit with my work, and I've been contacted by a lot of the companies that do make art supplies, and even Michaels. I had a friend that was a vice president for Michaels at one point, and so I've been put on some lists as like a teacher to try things. So a lot of times they'll send me kits and things to try and then give them feedback. So that's another benefit of being an art teacher. And so I try out a lot of materials for them. So this is a cool little brush, dual tip brush marker that I got that's got a pink in and a red in. It's kind of fun, and you can vary your line width. So you can see this is a pretty good example of a cross contour. Now I just went one direction. You could actually go, the other direction and kind of follow the contours the other way if you wanted to. Just think about like the natural flow of it, and you may make some mistakes, and that's fine. That's part of it. Sometimes when you make a mistake, it helps you see better and understand the process more. So, the more lines you add, I think sometimes it can make it look even more 3D. So that's what we call a cross contour. And you're going to do 2 of those. Okay, so you can see not too bad. And whatever objects that you want, I wouldn't draw just basic shapes. I want you to actually draw real objects that you're looking at. So maybe it's your coffee mug. Maybe it's a water bottle, your shoe, whatever. I have sometimes students are like, are we going to have to draw our hands anymore? You can draw your foot if you get bored with your hands. If you want to draw your foot, you could do that too. Okay, so those are all the contour drawings. And then the next thing we're going to do is a few